The coffee was already cold. Yvonne had set it on the corner of Curtis's desk when she walked in, the way she always did on Tuesday mornings. 2 sugars, the way he took it. 11 years of small courtesies. 11 years of knowing how the man who managed her schedule took his coffee. She had not planned to bring it today. Her hands had just done it. Muscle memory is its own kind of loyalty, even when loyalty is run out. The paper sat between them on the desk. October inventory reconciliation. Line 14, cash register variance. Amount. At the bottom, a blank line. Reviewed and certified accurate by. The pen was already uncapped. Curtis had done that before she came in. It's straightforward. He was standing behind his chair, not sitting. The posture of a man who wants to look unhurried. Same as last month. Sign off, we're done. The fluorescent light above them ticked once. It had been ticking for 3 years. Yvonne looked at the paper. She had signed it before, not because she believed the numbers were right. She had stopped believing that sometime around year 4, but because she understood the arithmetic of her own life. A signed paper cost nothing. An unsigned paper cost everything. Rent, the dialysis schedule, the $5 in the kitchen drawer she kept for the nights her mother might need a cab before she got home. She had done this math before she walked in. She had been doing it in one form or another for 11 years. $340. She thought about her father's face at 5:45 that morning, still half asleep in the bedroom doorway, the wordless send-off that meant go, I'm fine, come back to me tonight. She thought about the first morning she had walked through Hargrove's back door. 33 years old, a 4 a.m. start time that the 3 applicants before her had all declined. The owner's son had looked at her and said, you'll probably last 2 weeks. She had not answered. She had asked what time she was expected. That was 4,015 mornings ago. She picked up the pen. She set it back down, not on the paper, but beside it parallel to the edge, with the deliberateness of someone who has made a decision and is not going back. I'm not going to sign it, she said. Curtis took a half second before he showed it. She had learned to watch for that delay over the years. She saw it now. Yvonne, patient. The patience of a man who believes the outcome is settled. It's a signature. That's all. I know what it is. The fluorescent light ticked again. Outside the window, she could hear the store opening, front doors, first customers, the quiet industry of a Tuesday morning beginning without her. She pushed the paper back across the desk. Not hard, not dramatically, just across the laminate surface until it sat in front of him again, where it belonged. Then I'm going to need your badge, Curtis said. She had known this was coming. She had known it the moment she set the pen down, knowing it did not make it smaller. But she had also known something else. Something she had carried since the first time Curtis slid a paper across this desk, that there is a cost to the things we do not do, just as surely as there is a cost to the things we do. She had been paying that bill for a long time. She unclipped her badge, set it on top of the paper. She could not have predicted what came after. She would say that honestly, later, to anyone who asked. She had walked out of that office with a small cardboard box and no plan beyond getting to the end of the block. She had not been thinking about justice, or evidence, or a man standing in line at register 3 with his phone already open. She had been thinking about her mother's face at 5:45 in the morning, and the $5 in the kitchen drawer, and whether there was still enough left of her, after 11 years of small surrenders, to build something that could not be taken back. She pushed the paper back across the desk, and everything that came after, she could not have predicted any of it. If this story is already reaching you, please subscribe and turn on notifications. There are more stories like this one, and I don't want you to miss them. The coffee was already cold. Yvonne had set it on the corner of Curtis's desk when she walked in, the way she always did on Tuesday mornings. 2 sugars, the way he took it. 11 years of small courtesies. 11 years of knowing how the man who managed her schedule took his coffee. She had not planned to bring it today. Her hands had just done it. Muscle memory is its own kind of loyalty, even when loyalty is run out. The paper sat between them on the desk. October inventory reconciliation. Line 14, cash register variance. $340. The bottom, a blank line. Reviewed and certified accurate by. The pen was already uncapped. Curtis had done that before she came in. Straightforward. Stood behind his chair, the posture of a man who wants to look unhurried. Same as last month. Sign off, we're done. The fluorescent light above them ticked. It had been ticking for 3 years. Yvonne looked at the paper. She had signed it before. Not because she believed the numbers were right. She had stopped believing that around year 4, but because she understood the arithmetic of her own life. A signed paper cost nothing. An unsigned paper cost everything. Rent, the dialysis schedule, the $5 in the kitchen drawer she kept for the nights her mother might need a cab before she got home. She had done this math before she walked in. $340. She thought about her mother's face at 5:45 that morning, half asleep in the bedroom doorway, the wordless send-off that meant go. I'm fine. Come back to me tonight. She thought about the first morning she walked through Hargrove's back door. 33 years old. A 4 a.m. start time the three applicants before her had all declined. The owner's son had looked at her and said, "You'll probably last 2 weeks." She had not answered. She had asked what time she was expected. That was 4,015 mornings ago. She picked up the pen. She set it back down, not on the paper, but beside it parallel to the edge, with the deliberateness of someone who has made a decision and is not going back. "I'm not going to sign it," she said. Curtis took a half second before he showed it. She had learned to watch for that delay. She saw it now. Yvonne. Patient. The patience of a man who believes the outcome is settled. It's a signature. That's all. I know what it is. Outside the window, she could hear the store opening, front door, first customers, a Tuesday morning beginning without her. She pushed the paper back across the desk. Not hard, not dramatically. Just back across the laminate surface until it sat in front of him again, where it belonged. "Then I'm going to need your badge," Curtis said. She had known this was coming. Knowing it did not make it smaller, she unclipped her badge, set it on top of the paper. She walked out of that office with a small cardboard box and no plan beyond getting to the end of the block. She was not thinking about justice, or evidence, or a man standing in line at register 3 with his phone already open. She was thinking about her mother's face at 5:45 in the morning, and the $5 in the kitchen drawer, and whether there was still enough left of her after 11 years of small surrenders to build something that could not be taken back. She pushed the paper back across the desk, and everything that came after, she could not have predicted any of it. If this story is already reaching you, please subscribe and turn on notifications. There are more stories like this one, and I don't want you to miss them. Hargrove Family Foods had been on the corner of Gilmore and Mosher since 1987. The sign above the door was the original, white letters on green. The G in Hargrove slightly lower than the rest because a delivery truck had clipped it in 2003, and nobody had straightened it since. Inside, the floors were the same linoleum they had always been, pale yellow with a pattern that looked chosen by someone who had never met dirt. The refrigerator units along the back wall hummed at a frequency you stopped hearing after the first week, and never heard again until your last day, when suddenly it was all you could hear. Yvonne had started in October. She remembered because the heating was already broken, and she spent her first 3 weeks working in her coat. Mr. Hargrove Sr. had interviewed her at the break room table, with a cup of coffee going cold between them. He had lost 2 cashiers that month. The 4 a.m. shift had been open 6 weeks. 3 people tried it. None lasted a fortnight. When Yvonne sat down across from him, he looked at her the way a man looks at a long shot he can't afford not to take. She was 33, separated 8 months. Her husband had left in February, taking the second income with him. Her mother, Della, had moved in the month after, not because either of them suggested it directly, but because Yvonne had mentioned the rent on the phone one evening, and Della had shown up 4 days later with 2 suitcases, and a look that said, "This is not a conversation, this is a fact." They rearranged the apartment without discussing it. Della took the bedroom. Yvonne took the sofa. That arrangement had held for 11 years. Before her kidneys, Della had been a second-grade teacher for 22 years at a public school in Cherry Hill. She retired early, not her plan, and never complained about it once. She kept her teacher's habits. She noticed everything, asked questions only when she intended to do something with the answer, and had a way of going still and quiet when she was thinking that Yvonne had watched since childhood and still could not fully read. Most mornings when Yvonne came home from her shift, Della was already at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and the newspaper, already dressed, reading glasses on. Della would look up. "How was it?" Yvonne would say, "Fine." Della would hold that look 1 second longer than necessary. The tears look, the one that said, "I know there is more. I am giving you the space." Then go back to the paper. 11 years that exchange. Yvonne had never taken the offered space. Della had never pushed. 4 years in, Della's kidneys began their slow withdrawal. Stage 3 chronic kidney disease. 3 dialysis appointments a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at the clinic on North Avenue. Yvonne learned the bus schedule, then the cab numbers, then started keeping $5 in the kitchen drawer. Always the same drawer, so that if Della needed a ride while Yvonne was still on shift, the money would be there without needing to be found. She never told Della about the drawer. Della never mentioned finding it. This was the grammar of their household. Things done quietly, in advance, without announcement, so that the other person never had to feel the particular weight of being looked after by someone who could not afford it. Yvonne's shift started at 4 a.m. 2 alarms, 3:30 and 3:40, and she was usually awake before either. Coffee first. Then Della's medication on the nightstand with a glass of water. Then the door locked twice, the way Della had taught her in a different apartment. when locking the door twice meant something different than it did now. She owned 3 pairs of work shoes and rotated them, 2 days on, 1 day off, because she had learned in year 2 that shoes worn every day broke down by month 8, and replacement shoes were not in any version of her budget she had ever written. She kept a small notebook in her locker. Register counts that were off, short deliveries, reorder flags. After the 3rd time her verbal notes were ignored, she started writing them down. After the 5th time written notes were ignored, she stopped reporting and started keeping records for herself. That notebook was in the cardboard box she carried out this morning. Curtis Haig had managed the Gilmore Street location for 4 years, placed there by his uncle who bought out Mr. Hargrove's senior share in 2019. He was not cruel in any way that announced itself. He remembered birthdays, brought food from his mother's kitchen on holidays, left it in the break room with a handwritten note. He understood that loyalty is cheaper to buy than to demand. The monthly inventory reconciliations worked like this. Any variance under $400 was written off as shrinkage, the industry term for theft, damage, and error combined. Curtis's variances were always between $280 and $380, consistent enough to be unremarkable, small enough to avoid audit triggers, large enough across 12 months to amount to real money. The people who signed were not stealing, they were surviving. There is a difference, even if the signature looks the same. This is not uncommon. Wage theft, falsified records, withheld pay, coerced sign-offs, costs American workers an estimated $50 billion every year, according to the Economic Policy Institute. More than all property crimes in the United States combined, it falls hardest on food service, retail, domestic labor. The overnight shift, the early morning shift, the shifts that start before the city decides to wake up. Most of it is never reported. Most people with Yvonne's math make the same calculation month after month, until one morning something shifts, something small, nothing that would look like anything to anyone watching, and the numbers come out differently. For Yvonne, that morning was a Tuesday in November. The thing that shifted was her mother's face at 5:45, half asleep in the bedroom doorway. Not worry, not need, just presence. Just, I see you. Come back to me. She looked at that face and thought, with a clarity she hadn't expected, she deserves better than what I have been giving her, and so do I. She went to work. She made the coffee. She carried it to the wrong office for the last time. The regional manager's name was Dwight Pollard, and he had driven up from the district office in Glen Burnie that morning for what Curtis had described, over the phone the previous Friday, as a routine staffing matter. He was not a bad man. He was a man who had learned over 14 years that the cleanest way to handle a staffing matter was to process it quickly, document it correctly, and leave. He had a 10:30 back in Glen Burnie. The termination form was already printed. Yvonne had known something was different the moment she saw Curtis's office door standing open at 7:10. That door was never open before 9. She had slowed her walk slightly, seen the back of a man she didn't recognize sitting against the wall, and kept moving to her register. She had started her count. At 7:18, Curtis appeared at the end of the aisle. Yvonne, can I see you for a minute? Not a question. The office was small with both of them in it. With 3, it was close in a way that felt deliberate, the kind of close designed to make one person feel outnumbered before anyone has said a word. Dwight Pollard stood when she entered, introduced himself with the mild courtesy of a man raised to stand for women who had not yet considered there were other ways to show respect. Curtis closed the door. The reconciliation form was on the desk. She recognized it before she saw the date. We've completed an audit of Register 4 for the period October 14th through 20th, Curtis said. There's a variance of $340. The audit team has identified the discrepancy as originating from your shift. I'd like to see the register tapes, she said. The tapes have been reviewed as part of the audit process. I'd like to see them myself. That's not part of the standard procedure at this stage. Then I'd like to see the camera footage from Register 4 for those dates. Dwight Pollard shifted his weight slightly. The camera system has been experiencing maintenance issues, Curtis said. We haven't had consistent coverage this month. Yvonne said nothing. She had heard this before, not from Curtis directly, but from 2 women on the morning shift in the break room, in the careful half-sentences people use when describing something that frightens them. I'm not going to sign it, she said. Outside the office window, the store had been open 40 minutes. A register beeping, a child asking for something. The ordinary sound of a Tuesday morning that did not know it was being observed. Yvonne. Curtis's voice stayed even, the patience of a man who had been through this before. This is standard reconciliation. Every variance requires sign-off. That's policy. I know the policy. I'm not signing a document that says I'm responsible for a shortage I didn't create. Dwight Pollard looked at Curtis. Curtis looked at Yvonne. Then I'm going to need your badge and your locker key, Curtis said. Effed immediately. She had known. She had stood in the apartment at 3:50 that morning and known, the way you know a thing you have been not knowing for a long time, when it finally stops being possible. She had made the coffee, laid out Della's medication, locked the door twice, and walked 6 blocks to work in the November dark, knowing she was walking toward an ending and choosing not to turn around. She unclipped her badge, set it on the form. She did not look at Dwight Pollard again. She went to her locker. She took the notebook first, 3 years of careful records that nobody had ever asked to see. Then the photograph of Della taped inside the door. Della at a school picnic, 2009, laughing at something outside the frame, the way she laughed when she forgot to be dignified about it. Then a pen, a small tube of lotion, a packet of crackers she had been saving for a slow morning. She put them in the box. She closed her locker. The store was at its Tuesday morning rhythm. 6 customers in the aisles, 2 registers open, the sound of stock being moved in the back. Nobody had been told anything. Nobody knew. She walked through the main floor toward the front door. One of the overnight stockers, a young man named Terrell who had been working there 8 months and always said good morning first, was arranging a display near the end of aisle 4. He looked up, he saw the box. Something moved across his face, recognition or the beginning of it, and he opened his mouth and then he closed it. He looked back at the display. She did not blame him. At register 3, a man was waiting to pay. Somewhere in his early 50s, dark coat that had seen several winters, a copy of the Baltimore Sun and a small bag of coffee. He had his phone out, angled slightly toward the front of the store. She noticed it the way you notice things at the edge of a moment you are trying to hold together. She did not look at him. She looked at the front door, the gray November morning beyond the glass, and walked through it the way she had walked through it 4,015 times before. Except this time there was a cardboard box under her arm and she was not coming back. Outside, the cold came in from the harbor, low and steady, finding every gap. She stood on the sidewalk. She did not call Della. It was 7:31 in the morning. Della would be at the kitchen table with her tea, and the last thing Della needed at 7:31 in the morning was this. She started walking. At register 3, the man in the dark coat paid for his coffee and his newspaper. He did not move toward the exit immediately. He stood at the end of the counter, watching the back of the store, where Curtis was already returning to his office. Then he looked down at his phone. He had not meant to start recording. He had opened the camera to check a message, and the video had been running when he looked up and saw the woman come out with the cardboard box. 18 years of working courtrooms had given him instincts that moved faster than his intentions. He had not lowered the phone. 43 seconds, imperfect angle, ambient audio, but there. The office door, the woman, the badge coming off, the careful way she walked out with her chin level, looking at no one. And before that, partially in frame, the desk, the form, and the pen that had been placed beside it. He stood for a moment longer. Then he thought about a morning 4 years ago. A different office, a different woman walking out a different door, with everything she owned in a box, and himself standing in a hallway not 20 feet away, deciding that the case wasn't strong enough, that the timing wasn't right, that there would be another opportunity. There had not been another opportunity. There was only ever the one. He walked out into the November morning. He did not know her name. He knew what he had seen, and this time, he was not going to set it down. The first morning was the hardest because her body did not know yet. Her alarm went off at 3:30 the way it always did. She was halfway to sitting up before the information arrived. There was nowhere to go. She lay back down. The ceiling was the same ceiling. The apartment made its small nighttime sounds. In the bedroom, she could hear Della breathing. She did not go back to sleep. She got up at 3:50 anyway and stood in the kitchen for a moment, unsure what to do with her hands without a shift to walk toward. Then she made the coffee the same way she always made it, laid out Della's medication the same way she always did, and sat at the kitchen table in the dark until the sky outside began its slow change from black to the particular gray of a Baltimore November. Then she started making a list. By the end of the first week, the list had 14 names. Grocery stores, a pharmacy chain, a food distribution warehouse on Pulaski Highway hiring for the overnight sort. She applied to all of them online and kept a notebook, a fresh one, not the work notebook, tracking each application by date, position, and status. By the end of the second week, 11 had not responded. 2 had sent polite automated rejections. 1 scheduled a phone interview. The phone interview lasted 9 minutes. The hiring manager had a pleasant voice and asked her 3 questions about her experience with inventory management. At the end, he said he would be in touch within the week. He did not get in touch within the week. She sent a follow-up email on day 8. The automated reply informed her the position had been filled. She was careful with the money. She had $847 in her checking account the morning she was let go. Rent, $780 due the 1st of December, groceries, $60 a week if she was precise, bus fare. Della's dialysis runs. She did not include anything that was necessary. There was no category for anything that was not necessary. She did not tell Della the full picture. She said there'd been a problem at work, that she was looking for something new, that it would be fine. Della listened with the particular stillness she brought to things she did not entirely believe, and did not ask further questions. And the next morning, there was a pot of soup on the stove that Della said she had made because she felt like soup, which was not something Della had ever said in Yvonne's memory. She ate 2 bowls. Neither of them said anything about it. 11 days after Yvonne was let go, a letter arrived from the insurance company. She had been expecting some version of this since the morning she walked out, had been carrying the knowledge of it the way you carry a bill you know is coming and cannot yet open. She sat at the kitchen table. She opened it. Cobra continuation coverage, $612 per month, to maintain the health insurance that covered Della's dialysis, her medications, her quarterly labs, the small function that kept her kidneys functioning at the reduced level they still functioned. If payment was not received within 30 days, coverage would lapse. If coverage lapsed, the dialysis clinic required new insurance verification before scheduling, a process that typically took 2 to 3 weeks. She set the letter on the table. $847 minus $780 rent was $60. The Cobra payment was $612. She did not need to do the arithmetic to understand what the arithmetic meant. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, a car went by, then nothing. The particular stillness of a Wednesday night that has no interest in what you are carrying. She heard Della's bedroom door open, the soft sound of slippers on the floor. Della appeared in the doorway in her robe, the one with the frayed cuffs she had owned for 12 years and refused to replace because it still did its job. She looked at Yvonne. She looked at the letter on the table. She did not ask what it was. She pulled out the chair across from her daughter and sat down. She folded her hands on the table the way she used to fold them at her classroom desk when a child was telling her something that required her full attention. They sat there together in the dark, not speaking, for a long time. Eventually, Della said, "We've been in worse." Yvonne thought about whether that was true. She decided it was, in the ways that mattered. Having come through things before is not a guarantee, but it is not nothing either. "I know," she said. Della nodded once. She got up, went to the cabinet, and made 2 cups of tea, the chamomile. The one she kept for the nights when ordinary tea was not enough. She set one in front of Yvonne without asking. She sat back down. They did not speak again. They sat with the tea in the quiet kitchen until both cups were empty, and then Della rose, touched her daughter once on the shoulder, just her hand, just a second, and went back to bed. Yvonne stayed at the table alone. She thought about Della at the dialysis clinic on Thursday, the chair her mother always chose, the third one from the window, because the light came in at an angle that didn't bother her eyes. She thought about what it would cost to let that chair sit empty while paperwork was processed. She was still sitting there when she heard the mail slot in the front door open and close. Too late for regular mail. She got up. In the homeless white envelope lay on the floor, her name in careful block letters, no stamp, no return address, inside a business card, cream stock, simple type, Reginald O.C., attorney at law, an address on North Charles Street, a phone number, and beneath it, a note on a small piece of paper torn from a legal pad. "You were right to walk out with your head up. If you want to do something about it, call. No obligation." She set the card on the table beside the insurance letter. The thing that threatened to take something away, and the thing that suggested quietly, without pressure, that there might be another direction. She put the card in the kitchen drawer, the same one, with the got $5 for Doug Cabot, and went to bed. At 3:50 the next morning, she woke the way she always woke. She got up. Coffee. Della's medication on the nightstand. The door locked twice. Then she sat at the kitchen table, took the card out of the drawer, and dialed. 3 rings. Then a man's voice, low and unhurried. "O.C.," she said. "My name is Yvonne Tate. I worked at Hargrove Family Foods on Gilmore Street for 11 years. I was let go 11 days ago for refusing to sign a document I didn't believe was accurate." A pause. Not a long one. "What time can you come in?" he said. The office was on the 2nd floor of a narrow big brick building on North Charles Street, above a tailor's shop that had been there since the 80s. The door at the top of the stairs said OSI Law in adhesive letters, one S slightly crooked. She knocked. A voice said, "Come in." The room was smaller than she expected and more lived in. Bookshelves along 2 walls. A desk with a computer that was not new, 2 chairs across from it. A window facing the street. On the windowsill, a single plant, something green and uncomplicated that had been there a long time and required very little. Reginald Osif was already standing when she came in. He gestured to the chair across from the desk. He did not offer to shake hands. Neither did she. "You want coffee?" he said. Not quite a question. "No." He poured himself a cup, sat down, set a legal pad on the desk. Tell me what happened. Start from when you got to work that morning. Don't skip anything because you think it's small, she told him. She was precise: dates, mounts, names, the sequence of events in Curtis's office, what she had asked for and what she had been told. She did not editorialize. She had spent 11 years learning to let facts speak because they were more durable than feelings and harder to dismiss. When she finished, he looked at his notes. How long had the variance pattern been running? As far as I can document, 3 years, possibly longer. I only started keeping records in year 8. The women you mentioned on the morning shift, one left in August. Yes, the one who's still there. Something specific. She said that you remember clearly, Yvonne thought. She said, I just sign it. It's easier. I asked easier than what? She didn't answer. He set the pen down. He looked at the window for a moment, then back at her. I had a case 4 years ago, he said. Similar situation. Morning shift worker, inventory discrepancy, a form she was told to sign. I was still with the DA's office at the time. He stopped. He did not seem to be struggling with the words, more that he was choosing them with the same care he used for everything. There were people above me who didn't want that case to go forward. I was told the evidence wasn't strong enough. I agreed with them out loud. I didn't agree with them inside. He looked at his legal pad. She lost the case. She lost the job. I left the DA's office 6 months later. He paused. I'm telling you this so you understand I'm not coming to this from a neutral position. I have a reason for being thorough. You should know that. Yvonne was quiet for a moment. Is that why you left the note? Yes. She nodded. That was enough. He turned the laptop to face her. On the screen was a still image, slightly low angle, the interior of a store. A desk partially visible through an open office door. A woman walking away from it, carrying a box, chin level. It took her a moment to understand she was looking at herself. 43 seconds, he said. The angle isn't perfect. The audio is ambient. But you can see the desk, you can see you leaving, and you can see something else. He pointed to the left edge of the frame. That's register 4. The timestamp is 7:02 a.m. 16 minutes before, as Curtis called you into the office. At the left edge of the frame, a figure partially visible, the register drawer open. I can't prove what that figure is doing from this angle alone. A good opposing attorney will argue it. But combined with a consistent variance pattern and at least one corroborating witness, it becomes something a fact finder can work with. You said corroborating witness, a second employee. Started 3 weeks after you left, Tanisha Webb, 23, afternoon shift. In 6 weeks, she's already been asked to sign a variance form once. She didn't know what it was. She signed it. He paused. She also saw something at Register 4 recently that she hasn't reported because she didn't know she had somewhere to report it. She's currently employed there, Yvonne said. Yes. If she testifies, Curtis will find a reason to let her go within the month. I want to be honest with you about that. The room was very still. Outside on Charles Street, a truck went by, heavy and slow. I want to meet with her before any decision is made, Yvonne said. I want her to hear it from me, not just what's at stake for the case. What's at stake for her? That's not standard. I know. He looked at her steadily. Then, I'll set it up. They met the following week at a coffee shop on Pennsylvania Avenue. Tanisha was 7 minutes late and apologized twice before she sat down, which told Yvonne something about the kind of person she was dealing with. Yvonne did not give a speech. She told Tanisha what had happened, plainly, without omitting the hard parts. The notebook, the forms, the morning she walked out, the insurance letter, the $67, the chamomile tea at midnight. She told her what the legal process involved and what testifying would likely cost her professionally. She did not soften it. Then she said, nobody warned me. I had been there for years and nobody told me this was happening or that there was anything I could do about it. I'm not going to let you not know that you have a choice. Whatever you decide is yours. I mean that. Tanisha was quiet for a long moment. She was looking at the table, turning her coffee cup slowly in her hands. Then she looked up. How did you know when to stop being scared? She asked. Yvonne thought about the answer. The honest answer was that she hadn't known. That she was still, in certain ways, scared. That the absence of fear was not what had moved her. It was the presence of something she couldn't live without, which was the ability to look at her own reflection and recognize the person looking back. I didn't stop, she said. I just decided it was mine to carry. Tanisha looked at her for a moment. Then she said, she told me nobody warned her either. So, the hearing was 6 weeks later, a Thursday morning in December, in a gray building on Calvert Street that smelled of old carpet and photocopier toner. Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. A hearing officer named Patricia Reese, who had the efficient manner of someone who had heard a great many stories and intended to hear this one with equal attention. Curtis arrived with 2 attorneys from a firm downtown. He was wearing a suit Yvonne had not seen before and looking at a point slightly above everyone's head, the look of someone trying to appear unconcerned and not entirely succeeding. Reginald presented the video first. The opposing attorneys objected to quality. Patricia Reese overruled. Tanisha testified second. Dark blazer, hair pulled back. She spoke clearly and without elaboration, the way someone speaks when they've decided to tell the truth and removed everything from it that isn't. She described what she had seen at Register 4, the form she had been asked to sign, what she had been told it was, why she had signed it. She did not look at Curtis. She looked at Patricia Reese. The opposing attorneys cross-examined her for 18 minutes. She did not change a single detail. Then Reginald placed the second document on the table. This is a compiled record of 7 employees separated from Hargrove Family Foods on Gilmore Street over the preceding 36 months. Each separation occurred within 30 days of a monthly inventory reconciliation. Each had been asked to sign a variance form in their final month. 6 of the 7 were morning shift cashiers. 5 were women over 40. He set the document in front of Patricia Reese. This is not a series of coincidences. This is a pattern. The room was quiet. Curtis's lead attorney leaned over and said something in his ear. Curtis did not respond. He was looking at the document, and for the first time that morning, he was not looking above anyone's head. In the hallway afterward, while they waited for the building's single elevator, Yvonne stood beside Reginald in silence. She was not thinking about the outcome yet. She was thinking about Tanisha Webb in that room, looking at Patricia Reese, 23 years old, her voice not shaking once. She was good, Yvonne said. Yes, Reginald said. She was. The elevator arrived. They got in. The doors closed. Neither of them said anything else. There was nothing else that needed to be said. The ruling came on a Tuesday. Yvonne was at the kitchen table when Reginald called. Not doing anything in particular, just sitting with her coffee, watching the light change over the row houses across the street. She had been trying not to think about the outcome. She had been mostly unsuccessful. He read her the key finding, then the remedy. Back pay for 11 weeks. Compensatory damages. Legal fees covered by the respondent. Not a large number by some measures. By the measures of her life, it was the COBRA payment covered through spring, the security deposit on the 2-bedroom apartment she had looked at twice and not allowed herself to want, and Della's dialysis chair, the third one from the window, continuing without interruption. She said thank you. He said she had done the work. She said she knew, but thank you anyway. She set the phone down. Outside, a car alarm went off and stopped, a child's voice on the block. The ordinary sounds of a Tuesday that did not know it was different from any other. She went to the bedroom doorway. Della was propped up on her pillows with the newspaper, reading glasses on, tea half empty on the nightstand. She looked up. Yvonne told her about the ruling, the numbers, the timeline. Della listened without interrupting. When Yvonne finished, Della was quiet for a moment. The 2-bedroom on Presbury, she said. Yvonne looked at her. You knew about that? You had the listing on the table for 4 days, folded in half under the phone bill. I live here too. I didn't want to. I know what you didn't want to do. Not unkindly. Just with the steady accuracy of a woman who had been watching her daughter protect her for 11 years and was prepared to name it now that the particular emergency of it was passing. You don't have to keep the bedroom. I know what a sofa does to a back over 11 years. I can see it. Yvonne did not answer. Call about the apartment, Della said. She picked up the newspaper and called the clinic about the insurance. That was that. Hargrove Family Foods closed for a full internal audit the following week. Curtis Haig was no longer employed there. The owner's attorney issued a brief statement acknowledging the findings. It did not use the word fired. It did not need to. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday morning in early February, Yvonne walked into Hargrove Family Foods. There was no particular reason to go back to that store. There was a closer one near the new apartment, but she had driven past the Gilmore Street location on Thursday and found herself slowing down, and she had thought about it since, and on Saturday she decided to stop thinking and just go. The store was the same. The G on the sign still crooked. The linoleum still pale yellow. The refrigerators humming at their familiar frequency, which she heard now as something almost like recognition. She took a basket, moved through the aisles, bread, milk, a bunch of yellow tulips for Della that she did not try to justify. She did not hurry. She looked at things on the shelves the way a person looks when they are not on the clock. At Register 3, the cashier was a woman she did not know, middle-aged, careful in her movements, the kind of careful that is not slowness but attention. The slightly too still posture of someone who had learned to read the room before moving in it. Yvonne recognized it the way you recognize something you no longer do but remember learning. She set her items on the belt. The woman scanned them, announced the total in a voice that was quiet but clear. Yvonne paid, took her change. She looked at the woman for a moment, not long, just long enough to mean something. Not sympathy, not pity, just the particular acknowledgement of one person who has stood in that exact spot recognizing another who is standing in it now. Then she nodded. The woman looked back. Something passed across her face. Not quite recognition, not quite surprise. More like, I see you seeing me. She nodded back. Yvonne picked up her bag and walked to the door. She stopped once, not to look back, but to register the moment, the way you register the last page of something you know you are finishing. The hum of the refrigerators, the creak of the floor, the pale yellow linoleum. Then she walked out into the February morning. She had spent 11 years inside those walls. Now she was outside them, and they were just walls. She put the tulips carefully in the back seat and sat there for a moment without starting the engine. Through the windshield, she could see the storefront, the sign, the crooked G, a woman inside moving between rev registers. She watched it for a moment the way you watch something you are releasing. The apartment on Presbury Street had 2 bedrooms. Della would take the one with the east-facing window. Morning light came in soft, and Della had always preferred soft morning light. Yvonne would take the other. She would sleep in a bed. She would set 1 alarm instead of 2. She started the engine. She drove home. Della's corner opened on a Friday morning in October, 13 months after Yvonne had set a pen down beside a reconciliation form and pushed it back across a desk. The sign was hand-painted, dark green letters on cream, the apostrophe slightly high because she had been holding her breath when she painted it. She decided to leave it. Her mother had always said that the things you make with your hands carry the mark of the moment you made them. And that was not a flaw, that was the point. 3 aisles, a refrigerator unit along the back wall, produced near the window where the light was best. And beside the register, a glass jar with a handwritten label, College Fund, for whoever needs it. She had put the jar there the previous evening after the shelves were stocked and the floor was swept, and Della was settled in the red cushioned chair position so she could see the whole store without turning her head. Della had looked at the jar. Whose college? She asked. Whoever needs it, Yvonne said. Della nodded the way she nodded when something was exactly right and required no further discussion. The first hour brought 4 customers. At 7:04, the door opened and Reginald Ossie walked in. Dark coat, the same one from 13 months ago. He moved through the space without hurry. He paused at the produce, looked at the sign, nodded once to himself. He took a can of coffee from the back refrigerator, set a $20 bill on the counter. Yvonne counted out his change, $17.51, and held it toward him. He looked at the jar, then he pushed the 20 past the change. For the jar, he said. You don't have to do that, she said. I know, he said. He took his coffee. At the door, he paused and looked back, not at Yvonne, but at Della, sitting in her red chair with her reading glasses on. Reginald Ossie nodded to Della Tate. Della Tate nodded back. Then he walked out. Yvonne placed the bill in the jar. The first one, sitting alone in the glass, slightly curved at the edges. At 8:40, Tanisha Webb came in. New coat, chosen with care. She picked up a bottle of water, set a $5 bill on the counter, and shook her head when Yvonne reached for the register. She pushed the 5 toward the jar. Neither of them said anything. There was nothing that needed to be said. Tanisha walked out. In the jar, $25. The first 2 deposits in a fund for someone who did not exist yet. Some future person who would walk through this door and find that something had been left for them by people they would never meet, who had decided without being asked to leave something behind for whoever came next. In the back of the store, Della turned a page of her newspaper. Outside, Baltimore was doing what Baltimore does in October. Light going gold through the row houses, kids on their way to school, the city turning itself over into another day without waiting to see if anyone was ready. Yvonne looked at her store, produced by the window. The sign, the apostrophe too high, Della in her red chair. The morning coming through the glass, she had built this, and it was real, and no one could take it back. This story is fiction. Yvonne Tate and Della and Reginald Ossie and Tanisha Webb do not exist. Hargrove Family Foods does not exist. But the thing at the center of this story is real. Wage theft, falsified records, withheld pay, coerced sign-offs, cost American workers an estimated $50 billion every year, more than every robbery, burglary, and theft in the United States combined. It falls hardest on workers in food service, retail, domestic labor, the people who show up before the city wakes up and leave after it goes to sleep, who sign papers because they have children and rent and sick mothers and no margin for what happens if they don't. Most never report it. Most calculate the cost and decide the math doesn't work in their favor. Yvonne's math didn't work in her favor either. What moved her was not the odds. It was the inability to continue being a person who signed things she knew were wrong. Not about what you can win, but about what you can live with. Our Reginald is in this story because I believe there are people like him in the world. People who once failed to do the right thing and spent years carrying that weight quietly. Who, when the next moment arrived, chose differently. Not for recognition, not for reward, just because the first time it cost them something they could not replace, and they were not willing to pay that price again. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Now, I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with it before you answer. Have you ever walked past something you knew was wrong and kept walking? A form someone asked you to sign? A number that didn't add up? A moment in a hallway where you saw something and looked away because looking was simpler than stopping? I'm not asking to judge you. I think most of us carry at least one of those moments, and I think the question isn't whether you looked away once. The question is what you do when the next moment arrives. Yvonne pushed the paper back across the desk. Reginald kept his phone open when he could have put it away. Tanisha sat down in a gray building on a Thursday morning and told the truth at a cost she had already counted. None of them were heroes. They were people who decided in one specific moment that what they carried afterward mattered more than what they avoided. That the weight of having done nothing is heavier in the long run than the weight of having done something hard. You may be watching this because an algorithm sent you here, or because someone you trust shared it. Either way, I'm glad you stayed to the end. If this story reached you, if any part of it felt true, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every week there is another story like this one, and I do not want you to miss it. And leave a comment. Tell me, what is the smallest act of witness you have ever given someone or received from a stranger that changed the way you move through a room? It doesn't have to be dramatic. The most important things rarely are. Yvonne set a pen down beside a paper and did not pick it up again. Everything else came from that.